to today's episode, and we have Dr. Debbie Bright, and we're going to talk everything about intermittent fasting and food sensitivities. So welcome, Dr. Debbie. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Chantel. So, I'm Dr. Debbie Bright. I'm a board certified and internationally recognized functional medicine physician. I also have a background in nutrition and exercise science. My passion is helping especially women discover their hidden food sensitivities. So I say so they can heal their face, fat, and fatigue. So essentially their skin, right? And then drop those unwanted pounds and get that energy that they've been missing out on in their life. Beyond that, I say help people with weight loss, and more so I help them discover their self-worth.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about food sensitivities for just a second. One of the things that I love about fasting is that it really helps you to really become more aware of yourself in all kinds of areas. And I think that even fasting can help people recognize some of their food sensitivities, because if you're just eating all day long, right? And like every minute, every 2 hours, you're eating, you aren't as in tune with your body of like what impacts you this way. So talk a little bit, let's start talking about food sensitivity tests. What is your take on them? Is there any that you say, this is a bunch of junk over here? They're doing a lot of like at-home food sensitivity tests now, like Everlywell. Do you trust those? And how accurate do you think those are?
That's a great question. So food sensitivity tests are more new to the market, right? And so I get questioned a lot about, can I use this $25 at-home kit? Or, why is the ones that you would recommend, more like $1,000 out of the patient's pocket? And what I just break it down to is that, you're getting what you're paying for. I tend to go more with Cyrex Laboratories or Vibrant Wellness. They've got some food zoomers that do really great deep dives. They look at the food proteins once they've been broken down into peptides. So, the way that lab best explains it is if you're playing baseball and you hit a pop fly out in the field, they've got the field covered with like 900 players. Someone's catching that ball, right? Like it's not going to slip through the system. You're going to know. On the other side of that, I'm trained through the Institute for Functional Medicine, and, IFM points to the elimination diet as hands down the gold standard, because the person, takes the food out for up to 21 days, and 21, it's like you see all these diets are all 21 day, 28 day. The real reason outside of the fad number is that 21 days are how long it starts to take the antibodies that your body's built up to the foods that are slipping through your gut lining and causing the food sensitivity. So it takes 21 days for those antibodies to die off or begin their half-life to die off. So, people start to feel better typically much sooner than that, around the 4-day point. However, a lab can say one thing and then a person can say, oh my gosh, this food showed up that, I don't even really eat that, right? And so maybe there's some inaccuracy there, and it's something that is still evolving in the future. But when it comes down to it, I like to run a patient through an elimination diet, because they know their body and they know what they react to once it's been taken out and then reintroduced.
So let me tell you a little bit about my personal experience. I've done a couple of food sensitivity tests, and one time I did one, and I feel like they're so all over the map. This is why I feel like I don't really trust them, because I've taken probably 3 and I took them over a year span. And so let's say I took the first one. First one said I was highly allergic to eggs, like how they have different ratings, like almost like red, orange, green, or whatever. And they're like, highly, highly sensitive to eggs. And then the next one said, lettuce, like romaine lettuce or something like that. I mean, it was just all these crazy things. And so each time it had totally different things. Like this time it said I was highly allergic to eggs. This time it didn't. And this one said I wasn't allergic to gluten. And so it was just all over the map. So I guess the question is, how could a test go, okay, let's say they took one on month 1 and it said all these items. How could month 2 you have a totally different set of items that the test is saying, look, now all of a sudden your body does not react poorly to this. Now all of a sudden, okay, last month you were highly, highly allergic to eggs. You shouldn't eat them at all. Now here we are 30 days later. Oh, eggs are on your green list. You're absolutely able to. So I think with that being said, I mean, even for me, I would say, okay, is this bogus or what's going on?
Right. So that's definitely worth looking into. And the part where I want to lean towards it being bogus is based on, what are people actually doing? Was it like you got the results and you pulled it out completely and you were very diligent and you took digestive enzymes and probiotics and, herbs to support your gut lining and then you reintroduced it? Because it just depends on where people are playing in that. Like, can you take out eggs and do those things and see, quick turnover in the gut? Like our gut is a single cell layer thick and it does turn over quickly. So if we're doing the right stuff, we're taking the food out, we're putting the right healing foods in, and we calm down inflammation, it most certainly could turn over very quickly. But what I do tend to see is that if someone is reactive to a food, we need to take it out a minimum of 3 months, do a gut healing protocol, and then reintroduce the food. So that's a quick time span. And I think that's why people are having such distrust with the food sensitivity testing. And still, if I'm going to test someone, ideally, I still want to run them through an elimination diet, try to get the gut inflammation to calm down. And then at that point, we could reach into testing, because if someone's gut is inflamed, stuff's going to show up all across the board. And it's based on what we're eating day in and day out, right? So if our gut lining, the integrity is compromised, then the foods that we're consistently eating, which in the standard American diet happen to be, gluten, soy, dairy, eggs, corn, sugar, peanuts, artificial sweeteners, and added sugars. If that's just a consistent insult to the gut lining, or not necessarily insult, but going through a gut lining that has broken down barriers, those proteins get through. And so that's what we're reacting to. So, when people get the food sensitivity test, they usually come back and say, oh my gosh, I'm reacting to everything I eat. Well, that's why. It's not that the food sensitivity is the root problem. It's that the gut lining is the root problem. But I totally understand where you would be, not trusting a test. You take 1 month apart, 30 days apart, and it's all over the board. So I would say, let's set that aside, do an elimination diet, and then you reintroduce those foods one by one and test your reactions to it personally.
So let's talk a little bit about applied I can never say it. Kinesiology. Kinesiology. I never can say it right. But basically, so I went to a doctor, and he was a chiropractor, and what he did was he literally took my arm and he put all this food in my arm. So like he had me bring like some of the stuff that I bring, and he literally put my arm up, and then he would like test my strength. So I'd hold it in one arm, and then he would test my strength in the other arm. And so basically it's, where they expose a person to the suspected food by having them hold it or bring it close to the body. And then they measure the muscle strength by applying pressure to the extended arm. And he did it over and over again. So what is your opinion of that? Do you feel like, okay, because basically, if my arm was weak, then that meant, hey, I'm going to be allergic to that body. And the food allergen will make you weaker when you're close to it. Have you heard of that? And do you think it's true, or what is your opinion about that?
So it's funny that you asked me about that one, because, the doctor part of me, I'm in DC, so I was trained as a chiropractic physician, and it's in the chiropractic realm that we are taught applied kinesiology. I did do coursework on it in school. However, that was never a way that I necessarily practiced. Now, I have plenty of colleagues that do it, that believe in muscle testing. So it's hard for me to speak to it from an angle in that I just don't do it. So I don't personally see a lot of validity in it, where, it could just be that I'm not well trained in it. However, on the other side of it, my best friend in grad school, he was the one that told me when I was having issues with, like ADD and fatigue and whatnot in school, he was like, you have food sensitivities. And he was an applied kinesiology practitioner. And so he did, testing on me and whatnot, which I believe back then it was like eggs showed up for me, but I just don't ever really think that I have a problem with eggs. They don't seem to be too much of an issue when I eat them, pull them out and reintroduce them. So, is there validity to it? I'm not sure. I know, we're in a mastermind group together with Dr. Alan Christensen, and he has a great article about how in naturopathic school, they were learning that as well. And he challenged it where they took some kind of like tinctures and put, vitamins or whatnot in it that the patients should be needing. And then they randomly distributed these to where the practitioner, who's supposed to be, well-versed in applied kinesiology, would sit the vials on the students and then muscle test. And it just showed up the results were pretty inconsistent. So I don't want to hate on that by any means. It's just not something I'm well-versed in. So, I feel like it's hard to speak to it, but it's just not the path that I take to get, valuable results for my patients.
Now, what about like cytotoxicity testing, where they take like the white blood cells from like a sample of the blood, and then the cells are put on a slide that contain like dried samples of food a person could be allergic to, put it under a microscope, and then see like, are they allergic to them? Have you had any experience with that?
I actually haven't. It's just not the way that I go when I'm running my patients through testing. But, it is super interesting to see the results of that stuff and to watch it evolve, right? Like, I think we're just getting our toe in the door with this kind of information. And so, I'm excited to see where it goes in the future.
Okay. What about IgG or IgG4 testing?
So if I were to put a patient through food sensitivity testing, I'm definitely going to go the IgG route. And when I said, like, when we go through the elimination diet, and the antibodies that are dying off with their half-life of being 21 days, it is an IgG antibody.
Okay. And is that through a blood test?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And what about a hair analysis? Like, have you ever done anything with hair analysis to check for allergies?
I personally don't. I keep gearing back to the elimination diet because that's where we really tend to play unless, my patients go through it and they, they're not getting the results, the weight loss and skin and energy results that everyone else seems to be getting. And we say, hey, are you an outlier? And then at that point, I would send them for food sensitivity testing. And then I also want that paired with a stool sample. So I like to use the GI map just to see, how the integrity of their gut lining really does look. And is there, are there any gut infections, parasites, viruses, anything like that, H. pylori, something that might need to be eradicated and killed. And then, we work on healing that gut lining again and then reintroducing the foods.
You guys, if you've been listening to my podcast, I've been talking about Magnesium, which is a digestive enzyme from Bioptimizers. And I want you to know that here's the thing. For me, having a digestive enzyme is a game changer because one of the biggest things that happens to me is I get really tired after my meal if I don't do it, and I have a problem with nutrient absorption. So if you could be eating the cleanest diet ever, but if you're not absorbing it, that's an issue. So this month, they're doing a really great special, and you're going to get a free bottle of the digestive enzymes from Bioptimizers. And so all you have to do is pay a nominal shipping fee. That's it. No other strings attached. It's the best thing ever. So get your free bottle of digestive enzymes. It's called Magnesium. Go to magnesium.com/wasteawayfree and use the coupon code wasteaway10. That's it. So magnesium.com/wasteawayfree. Use the coupon wasteaway10. It's awesome.
So let's talk about kind of some tips on a way to do the elimination diet where you aren't feeling so deprived. Because I think that what happens is with people, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to give up this and this and this and this and this. And, it just gets overwhelming. So it's like, what's a way that you can do the elimination diet where you can remove foods from your diet? And how do you know which are like the suspects that your body can't tolerate well?
So in my program, the way I laid it out is I did go and speak to the Cyrex and Vibrant, and I said, hey, what's showing up consistently in your labs that are coming back with the food sensitivity testing? And I've looked at my own patients when I've done tests on them, and I've spoke to colleagues. So across the board, we just know that there tends to be problems with gluten, soy, dairy, eggs, corn, peanuts, and then, like I said, added sugars and artificial sweeteners. So those are the core that we remove in my food sensitivity slim down program.
And if you had to pick out of those that you mentioned, if you had to pick the top 3, what would those be?
Gluten, dairy, and eggs across the board consistently show up and are problematic for people. So yeah, those are important ones to remove. Now, on the basis that we remove it, we take the foods out for 21 days, right? And then there needs to be a reintroduction program on the flip side of that. And we can talk about that a little later, but so not feeling so deprived. Well, if a patient comes in and I say you need to remove these foods, they really freak out because, like I said, it's what makes up our standard American diet. So it's like, well, there's nothing left to eat. So, I like to mind game this a little bit with them and be like, okay, well, if you're taking out gluten, right, you're taking out wheat, barley, and rye. And what that actually looks like is, we're not going to eat bread, and we're not going to have waffles, and we're not going to have pizza and pie and, cereal. And so it's just like you're eating this one food like in 5 different ways, right? So it sounds like there's nothing left to eat, but we've got to get past that mindset. And, it's really a disservice, I think, for people to go anywhere and hear that they've got these food sensitivities and simply be told, remove them from your diet, go along about your way. It doesn't work like that. There needs to be set meal plans with food that tastes delicious. It's not diet food. It has plenty of healthy protein, clean lean protein, healthy fats, slow digesting carbs, and lots of fiber from, vegetables. And then within that, people can eat the food. Then they can implement short windows of intermittent fasting, right? So they eat the food that helps them hit the right hormones. And then they can go 4 to 6 hours between their meals. Their blood sugar learns to stabilize, insulin settles down. And, on the flip side of that, they start to shed body fat. And, other things improve too, because like I said, I think it's important that if you're going to remove food sensitivities, you need to put a gut health protocol in, because the main reason why a person has a food sensitivity is due to the integrity of their gut to begin with. And then, when they live inside, having recipes, grocery lists, meal plans, and making it easy, I really believe anyone can do anything for 23 days, right? So 21 to 23 days. So
let's talk about the reintroduction phase, because this is really important, where you're starting to slowly bring back those eliminated foods back into your diet. Now, are you going, okay, I'm going to just today I've done it for 21 days. Let's say Monday's here. Okay, Monday I'm going to reintroduce eggs. So I'm just going to eat eggs, and then see how I feel. And number 2, what are the symptoms that they're looking for? Like once they eat the eggs, let's say they bring eggs back in, is it joint pain, headaches, fatigue, bloating, stomach cramps, changes in their bowel, rashes, skin, what are things that are the main things they're looking for? Like when they eat it, now they go, okay, how do I feel? So what are the main things they see?
Okay, so when we roll into the elimination phase, right? So taking those foods out, solid 21 days, doing a really, really good job of trying to not cheat or slip and get them out. So now the immune system is prepped and primed. And now we're going to roll into the reintroduction phase. And so what that needs to look like is, in a perfect world, they're going to take one food at a time. They're going to eat it for 4 straight days. And then if a reaction shows up anywhere within the 4 days, the stuff you were just mentioning, if that shows up, they stop. And then they need to eat clean for the next 3 days and let those IgG antibodies in the immune system start to calm down again. And then they can roll let's say it's Monday again, right? So I do this in 1 food per week. Eat it for 4 days, see if you have any reactions, and then eat clean, and then move to the next food. Now, when it comes to food reactions, there's different types. So there's 3 types of adverse food reactions, and that there's food allergies, right? So we're not really exactly playing with that in this elimination diet, because if a person has a food allergy, they probably know it, right? It's shellfish, it's peanuts. They eat it, have an immediate reaction, need an EpiPen. It can be life-threatening, right? So that's one in its own. And then there's the food intolerance, food sensitivities realm, where food intolerance tends to be a non-immune, more like histamine reactions. People can react to alcohol, dairy products, sulfites, histamines, things like that, artificial colors, things that our body doesn't necessarily have digestive enzymes for to break down. And you can think about people who, tend to be of like Asian descent, African-American descent. They tend to be more lactose intolerant. So that's food intolerance. We look at symptoms there, which could be flushing, cold and flu-like symptoms, an inflammatory response, and just dietary discomfort. But when we roll into the food sensitivity realm, this is a delayed immune response. So that's why I have them eating it for up to 4 days, because somewhere in there, usually within a 72-hour range, they have to be able to start connecting the dots to, I ate this thing, and 3 days later, I got a headache, I got a skin rash, I broke out in acne, I started to feel fatigued, I had changes in my bowels, right? I have IBS, and that could look like constipation or diarrhea symptoms. It's just all the stuff you were mentioning, the joint pain, all of that falls into the food sensitivity category. So, I give people a checklist. I think they've got to know what they're looking for, right? They can say, I ate X, okay, over the next few days. I can journal in how I'm feeling. I can check a box. I feel this symptom, whatnot, and start bridging that gap and connecting the dot to the food and the food sensitivity delayed reaction. And that's what we're going for. And then beyond that, we would take it out for 3 to 6 months.
Let's talk about A2 milk for just a second and people with lactose intolerance. Have you seen people who have lactose intolerance? I know that A2 milk still contains the same quantity of lactose that's in standard milk. But have you seen people who have I've seen all these, I feel like the A2 milk is on every commercial on TV now. Have you seen anyone that was like, okay, I wasn't able to do milk before, but now I can drink the A2 milk?
So it's funny because I don't ever really watch TV. So I feel like I'm in the dark over A2. So if you tell me what it is, I could probably tell you what's going on with it.
Yeah. So basically what it is for A2 milk is that there's 2 different kinds of proteins, and it's basically where some people are able to, so A2 milk is a variety of cow's milk that has the casein proteins. There's they have A1, and instead it has mostly A2, and some people are able to digest A2 milk more than they can do A1 milk. And so it's this new thing, I guess it's just basically touted as being easier for some people to digest. And so they did all these things. And so they're saying, okay, well, it has the same amount of lactose, but there's a protein intolerance. And so some people don't have the digestive enzymes to digest the A1, but they have it to digest the A2.
That's super interesting. So I'd have to specifically answer it. I'd have to dig deeper into that. But to speak on the lactose intolerance, I was listening to a great podcast. I feel like it was just a couple weeks ago. And Chris Kresser was on there, and he was talking about, it was around 12,000 years ago that someone of European descent in that area figured out how to milk an animal, right? And so it spread, and then individuals that lived in those areas kept their digestive enzymes that could break down lactase, beyond infancy, because ideally we no longer ingest milk, and so we would lose the ability to break it down. And that genetically is, I guess, would be the right, it's not right or wrong, but the right thing, or the most, ideal way for our body. However, people that were from Asian and African-American descent, right, weren't doing that. And so they downregulated the digestive enzymes. And now 12,000 years later, we've got, European descent individuals who tend to do better with milk in the diet. And then it also comes down to, a lot of the milk is super processed. So it's not raw, that, the digestive enzymes are removed out of it. And so it tends to be problematic for people at times. But yeah, I'm going to have to check out this A2 milk thing. I got to see how that works. But, nonetheless, if I'm doing an elimination diet on someone, I would just take it out completely.
Take milk out altogether. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the milks industry going, people are, that's their way of saying, because they're saying there's evidence that suggests that the A1 protein is associated with digestive discomfort. And so that's what people are saying. Like, when I drink milk, my digestive system doesn't like it. And so now they're saying, okay, well, the A1 protein is not, the A1 protein is harder to digest. And so, that we found that some people have, when they just have the A2 protein, then they have a better time with digesting it. So
super interesting. My husband doesn't do so well with dairy. Maybe I'll test it on him, and then he breaks out in acne right away. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
My husband, and he's going to get mad at me for saying this, but literally, when he has dairy, has the worst gas, like immediately, like we're all just like, oh my gosh, let's leave the room, and it's like, he just won't stop. Like, he got our massage therapist comes to the house, and she's like, okay, let me ask you, did you have dairy? It's that bad with him. So I hope he doesn't listen to this episode. Well, any other tips that you could say to people of what they can do to try to eliminate food intolerances? Any tips that makes it easier, or suggestions that you have?
You were mentioning casein. And so what I want people to know is that there's a trifecta threat with processed food that, leads to food addiction. And so we're going to deal with that when we're taking it out, especially if somebody's been consuming a lot of food that has glutamorphine from gluten and casomorphine, casein from dairy. And then the third thing that processed foods tend to have is, high amounts of sugar, which is, 8 times more to the brain than cocaine. So, these foods can cause real life opioid addictions. And that's why it can be such a challenge taking it out sometimes. So, I like to make an elimination diet easy. We throw in a protein shake. We swap out like the dairy for things like, almond milk, flax milk, coconut milk. It's all about just making it quick and easy. I know with, you're a big intermittent fasting fan. I think that plays a role in helping the gut lining heal as well. So, timing that window down to kind of an 8-hour, have your protein shake, make sure all foods have protein, healthy fat, and fiber in them. And then you start hitting the winning hormones, which can get you into those smaller wins, those smaller intermittent fasting wins of, having the meals go between every 4 to 6 hours. And you start feeling better. And when you start feeling better within 4 or 5 days, then it becomes about making that extra win. When you start to see the weight shift and the inflammation cooling down, that's a win. So if people can get past that detox flu phase and start hitting the wins, then it starts paying off and it starts to become easier to maneuver, right? And then, if you get through the elimination phase and you go through the reintroduction and you really connect the dots on how something is, good or not favorable for your body, it starts to clear up. You start to tailor a diet that's meant for you, and then weight loss just comes naturally, which is pretty neat. And then you can move on to other things like, dialing in your intermittent fasting and whatnot, and having success there.
So let's talk one last thing about, the testing, because, a lot of people say, well, you should test, not guess. How much do the tests that you think are really solid, how much do those tests run, and how often are you recommending that someone get those tests done?
Right. So I would say ballpark range between Cyrex or Vibrant, if we're doing their wheat zoomers, you're going to spend around $1,000, $1,200 or so dollars. What comes back, it's kind of like you said, we score it. If they're in the red, this could be a very problematic food. It might need to stay out for up to a year, right? And if it sort of comes back in the yellow area, it's like, okay, let's remove this for 3 to 6 months and then just reintroduce it. But like I said, I don't think that anyone's doing themselves a favor if they simply pull the food and they do absolutely nothing to work on healing the gut. You know, I call it my 5R framework for rapid weight loss, but it really fits with the Institute for Functional Medicine's 5R framework for gut repair, which is, you know, remove the bad, which is the foods you're reacting to, replace the good, right, which is like digestive enzymes, re-inoculate, so get healthy probiotics into your gut that helps repair it. And then the other 4th R is repair, which would be bringing in like, you know, I work with like Designs for Health, and I've developed some of my own product line too, getting like the right herbs that condition, soothe, you know, aloe and whatnot, like to heal that gut lining, and then rebalance. So rebalance would be like making some lifestyle changes, right? That maybe are, you know, there's too much stress, or there's, you know, you're eating foods that you react to. So you have headaches, you're bringing medication in and it insults the gut lining. Maybe people need to address how much they're drinking. It's stuff like that, right? So repairing that gut lining, and then it depends on how serious a person really wants to be with it. You know, we can retest, probably at 6 months would be best. And then if they've been diligent, we could retest again at 1 year. And I would use, you know, I would always use the same company that you started with and use them to retest. So you're getting like the same, retest,
Great.
get the same more accurate results, right? I wouldn't switch companies around. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been a joy talking to you today. Tell listeners where they can find you and follow your work.
Great. So you can find me at millennialhealth.com, and we're revamping the whole site. We just did a big rebranding, and we're about to launch the product line and the new program, which is super cool. Or you can find me, I'm pretty active on social media, you know, and Facebook or Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Dr. Debbie Bright, and it's the same thing, facebook.com/Dr. Debbie Bright. Which is kind of funny, right? You get different platforms, you get like different ways people want to interact with you and different opinions. And Facebook tends to be like my older followers, and Instagram's more like my millennial followers. But you can find me either way. So yeah, reach out.
Awesome. Well, you guys stay tuned. We have our next episode coming up in just a minute.